think we're good to go here. Today, let's talk about Mitra. The god Mitra and Mitra's nakshatra, Anuradha. And what I'll do is kind of read along with the second half of my book, Nakshatra, The Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology, which at this very moment you could just go to Amazon.com and get. You could just type in Victicare, search Victicare Nakshatra or Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology, something like that. And you can buy it and check it out. It's a translation of Taittiriya Brahmana. It actually includes two different sections from Taittiriya Brahmana, the Nakshatra Sutra, which is amazing, and a bunch of poems or supplications dedicated to each nakshatra from the same book, Taittiriya Brahmana, which is an ancient book. And then it also has a narrative from me based on my study of Puranas about the gods. So now we're reading from that narrative. And today we're going to talk about Mitra, because we started talking about Indra's brothers, the 7 other Adityas, so the 8 Adityas. And let's see, we talked about so far. It's not so important, but now we're going to talk about Mitra. So let's see what I've got written here. So is this working? I don't see anybody. Let me see if I can. Yeah, great. We got some people. All right, so here we go. So the word Mitra means that which unites, right? So me is a root that means about things joining or coming together. And tra means an instrument for doing something. Like a mechanism or a tool or a technique for doing something is indicated by a suffix tra. Mitra is the thing that brings stuff together. So that's the word for love. Mitra. Love unites. So Mitra is the god of love, not just in a romantic sense. In a romantic sense and also in every sense. So also the sense of affection, also the sense of friendship, also the sense of fidelity. Fidelity means coming together and staying together, right? So that's Mitra. So that type of basic love, and then friendship, and then affection, like parents feel for children, and then love, romantic love. Mitra is the god of all those. So the Mitra's nakshatra is Anuradha. The word Radha also means love. It means to worship something, but not like in a church. It means to please something, give yourself to something, dedicate yourself to something, is Radha. Give yourself to something. And Anu is a prefix that means some kind of a sequence, indicates sequence. Anu always indicates a sequence. And Anuradha means something that comes as a result of Radha. So as a result of love. So Anuradha means the result of love, or the reward of love, or the effect of love. So Mitra is the god of love. Mitra's nakshatra is called the effect of love, or the reward of love. The concept, the whole concept in Vedic culture of what love is that it's a unifying force. That's what sex is. Sex is the unification of two people, right? That's so that just typifies what love is. When people love each other, they get closer together. When people don't like each other, they turn away from each other, they get further apart. So there's some interesting stories about Mitra. It also includes a story about Varuna, which is interesting, because Varuna is the god of Shatabhishak, which is a passionate nakshatra. And Anuradha, do not mistake. See, there are so many mistakes about this nakshatra, Anuradha. Thinking that it's a soft nakshatra, things like that. Or like it's a lovey-dovey nakshatra. Or that if you have something in here, you're going to have a good love life. Anuradha nakshatra is extremely focused on love. And that doesn't really make your life easy, necessarily, does it? Because love is very intense. So if you study the sutras about Anuradha, you'll see the key, about sustaining stimulation is key to be able to sustain Anuradha and keep it producing its output, the reward of love, which is the ecstasy of it. Let's talk a bit about Mitra. Let's see what I have written here. Mitra cannot tolerate being disunited. The very name Mitra means to unite. So this is a god that can't tolerate being separated. So if Mitra is not together with somebody in romance, he's going to seek friendship. And usually he'll go to his brothers for friendship. So there's some misconception that Mitra is gay. There are plenty of gay references in the Vedas. Maybe not plenty, but there are certainly gay references in the Vedas, but this is not one of them. Mitra's relationship with Varuna is one of friendship. Now, it's an extremely intimate friendship, as you'll see in the story, but they're not actually being sexual with each other. Okay, so if Mitra always wants to be united, and this is the nature of love, is you always want to be together. If you notice, when you feel sad, you almost always feel alone. It's almost synonymous, isn't it? The feeling of sadness, depression, or any kind of negative thing is almost synonymous with feeling alone, excluded, disconnected. Because what Mitra does is Mitra brings things together, and that causes Anuradha. Anuradha is an ecstasy, a happiness. So happiness comes from bringing things together. Sadness comes from taking them apart. So Mitra doesn't like to be taken apart. He'll unite often with his brothers, not sexually. Right? And he's most often united with Varuna. Okay, so it's an actual unity. You've got to remember that they're not humans. And I don't exactly know what they are, but I've heard things that have made sense to me, like about how they are constructed of different elements. Their bodies are constructed of things which are not always physical. And so they're much more fluid, and they're much more changeable by their mind. The mind can much more easily affect the change in their body. So the gods like Mitra, they can actually merge their body into somebody else's. And Mitra particularly, because that's who he is, he likes to merge, he does this. And this is what, since we're talking about Anuradha, which is a very sexual nakshatra, a lot of people will try to say this is a spiritual nakshatra because of the word Radha, but you kind of miss the point about the spirituality of Radha, and you kind of miss the point that they're not talking about Radha with this nakshatra. They're talking, well, I have a big spider. They're talking about Mitra. Yeah, bro. Of course, Radha is worth thinking about in relation to Anuradha because she's the apex of Mitra. She's the apex of love. But it's not spiritual nakshatra just because it has the name associated with the goddess. It's a very sexual nakshatra. So if you think about what's going on in sex, it's a physical attempt to actually merge bodies. So Mitra, who's the god of this kind of stuff, can actually literally do that, merge body. And he can do it even in non-romantic context. So he does it with his brothers, etc. So Mitra and Varuna are sometimes, or perhaps even often, coexisting in one physical form. So they often have a physical body. So you'll find some places in the Vedas they just address Mitra and Varuna as one person. Now, here's a really cool, interesting story. Once upon a time, when they were in one form, Mitra and Varuna, they were strolling on the seashore, some seashore somewhere in some realm, and probably in paradise, because they happened to cross paths with Urvashi. Urvashi lives in paradise. Urvashi is the goddess of dancers. So she's the topmost dancer, and not just dancer, but of all courtesans. So courtesans are women, to the best of my, I don't know if they're always women, but courtesans are people who are extremely adept in creating beauty. So they're extremely adept in arts, dance, music, singing, poetry, and so forth. So they get that becomes their career, is to show people beauty, and sexual arts are included. So it's kind of like prostitutes, but it's not like people that can't do anything else, so they become prostitutes. It's like these are people who are extremely revered. They're extremely talented and looked up to. So there's a goddess of the goddess of prostitutes, but it gives you the wrong idea, because when you think of prostitute, you think of somebody on crack on the street corner. That's definitely not Urvashi. But if you think of courtesan, maybe you get closer to the idea. Geisha. So Urvashi is the goddess of that. She lives in paradise, and she's the centerpiece, you can say, of Indra's court. So she's taking a stroll along the seashore, because beautiful people like to enjoy beautiful places. And Mitra Varuna meet her. Now, Mitra and Varuna were in one form, but you could say that they had an opposite impulse. They both had a strong impulse to meeting her. But both of them were like, wow, this is amazing. This is a great opportunity. Let's get romantic with Urvashi. But one of them, it's Varuna, who the motivation for this was sensual hunger, and Mitra had a different motivation. So this is also introducing you to the concept of a difference between two things known in Sanskrit as kama and prema, or lust and love. Varuna's reaction to Urvashi was lustful, which means, I want to enjoy that. And Mitra's reaction was loving. Wow, I want to augment that. I want to raise that up. I want to worship that. I want to do with that what should be done with it. So that's called bhakti or prema. When your reaction towards the object of love is that the object of love is superior to you, and therefore you want to be enjoyed by it, you want to enhance the object of love's experience of life. Lust is where the object of love is inferior to you. It's an object to your subject, and you want to eat it, you want to experience it, you want to enjoy it. So there's two different things going on in this being who is now in one body. Varuna is feeling lusty, and Mitra is feeling love. Both will make you want to have sex. Both will make you want to unite. So both of them want to have sex with Urvashi. But Varuna is experiencing it as lust, and Mitra is experiencing it as love. So Urvashi is also very open to sex. She's the courtesan of paradise. It was Urvashi actually who propositioned Arjuna. Arjuna, the one who Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to, once went to Indra's court to get a special weapon. And while he was there, because Arjuna is really good looking, so while he was there, Urvashi propositioned him. And Arjuna said, well, Indra's my dad. Because Arjuna's mother is human, but his father is Indra. This is, Indra's my dad, and you're Indra's main swing. So you're like my mom. So it's not really interesting to me. I'm not really into that. And Urvashi got really offended. And she started to give him a big lecture about what it's like to be Urvashi, and that these kind of hang-ups about sexuality don't exist for her and in the heavenly realm. But Arjun wasn't going to hear it, so she cursed him. that you're not really a man, so you shouldn't be a man. And then Indra showed up right at the time that happened, and then he kind of was like, this is my son. Can you please give him a break? And she said, okay, all right. I just got angry. I'm sorry. I got really insulted. And she reduced the curse so that he would lose all of his testosterone and even his physical organs, but whenever he wanted to, once, for as long as he wanted to. So it became kind of like a secret weapon that he had, and he used it later. He lived for a year as a transgendered person and was able to therefore hide for a year at being a dance instructor to a princess whom he later married. So these stories are really interesting. So anyway, Urvashi is not like prude at all. Urvashi meets some gods on the beach and is like, okay, let's go. That's great. Wow, there's 2 guys in this one body. Okay, that sounds interesting. So she was totally into it. So they did it. Now, they're gods, so they know about things in a deep level. So they knew that they actually had conception. That Urvashi had become pregnant. So that's interesting. And Mitra feels really happy. He feels fully satisfied. So this is the nature of love compared to the nature of lust. Mitra, or love, prema, is always happy because there's always an opportunity to do something for the object of love. There's almost always an opportunity to do something or work towards doing something. And it feels satisfied because of that. It's actually getting the Anuradha all the time. It's getting the reward of love all the time, and that's satisfying. But the nature of Anuradha is, like I said before, it has to be constantly stimulated. So it's the way prema or real love works is that you keep getting the reward of it, but that reward itself stimulates you to keep doing more. So it's not like a cessation and then it's done. And lust is the same way, but for the opposite reason. Lust is also ceaseless. But lust is ceaseless because it never feels the placation of the hunger. And because the reason for this is that lust comes from the point of view of avidya, and love comes from the point of view of vidya. Lust is the product of ignorance, when love is a product of knowledge. Lust is the idea that you're superior to an object, so you can enjoy it. You can own it, possess it, and it's yours, and you can enjoy it. But that is ignorance. You're not superior. We are not superior to any objects. We're equal to or inferior to every object. So to feel that lust, that I'm going to take this and it's going to be mine and I'm going to do whatever I want in this and I'm going to enjoy this, that is just pure ignorance. So you can't be satisfied by it because it's not actually you're not able to experience it with your true self. You have to experience it with an ignorant version of yourself. So no matter how intense or great the lust ever becomes, it never feels satisfied. So it also continues to burn. But the love feels satisfied but continues to feel inspiration. So after the union, Mitra was fully satisfied. Varuna was still hungry. And this caused Mitra and Varuna to have a disunion. So they split into 2 separate forms. So this also shows you what will cause divorces. What goes against love is when simple point, but it's just like when people don't agree. Agreement and everything is part of Mitra. To be in agreement, to be on the same page. So if you want to know, like, how come I can't keep a relationship going, you should work on agreement. Not on agreements, not on contracts, promises, but agreeing, being able to see something the same way that the partner does. Being able to taste something the same way the partner does, being able to feel something the same way the partner does. Thinking about how does the partner experience this? How does the partner think about this? To come into more agreement. As soon as there's disagreement, then things split. So Varuna disagreed with Mitra. Mitra thought, this was great. We're done. We had a wonderful time. And Varuna thought, it's not done yet. I need more. So they had a split. And then Varuna starts trying to flirt with Urvashi again. And Mitra is just kind of watching like, oh boy, this doesn't look so good. So Urvashi was very happy with Mitra's response and not so happy with Varuna's. What quality of a man would you like? One who's never satisfied with what you give him? Or one who's satisfied with what you give him? So Urvashi was very pleased by Mitra's response and was displeased by Varuna's response. So she was turning away from Varuna. The thing is, though, apparently, I don't know, for whatever reason, or I don't know the exact details, although it would probably be interesting to try to figure them out, Varuna actually ejaculated anyway for a second time. So maybe it's what I write in the book is Urvashi, what is it? Urvashi turned away Varuna again and again, but even in her refusals, she was so attractive and stimulating that Varuna ejaculated anyway. For whatever reason or however it happened, Varuna is propositioning her, and then all of a sudden it happens. So then Urvashi actually feels like, God, that was kind of lame. That was kind of lame of me. This guy was so into me. Now remember, this is not like your housewife on Maple Street. This is Urvashi. The sexual hang-ups and all that stuff don't apply. So she's just thinking as a purely sexual being right now. And she's thinking, she felt bad. This guy needed me and I turned him away. So she didn't think I didn't think I shouldn't have done that, but she was like, she felt pity for him. So let me do something for him now. So what she did was she took the egg from her womb, put it in some kind of, they just describe it as a bowl. Who knows what it was, right? They put it in some kind of divine weird bowl and took the ejaculation from Varuna and put it in the same bowl. It's already fertilized with Mitra. So now it gains a second, becomes twins. The egg gets fertilized again and becomes twins. And then you get two sages born, Agastya and Vashishta. And these two guys, Agastya and Vashishta, would be really probably annoyed with us if we tried to determine which one came from which father. Although it may be, I should look it up and see if it's common knowledge. I don't recall which sage is from which. So anyway, this is a really interesting story, just because it's just incredibly interesting story. But another important thing about it is if you are dealing with the Anuradha Nakshatra, you're dealing with the issue of love. All your life. If you have something prominent in Anuradha, then this is the central theme of your life. So this story is a pretty good one to help you see the difference between love and lust. And also, Urvashi's reaction is also very important. The way she felt pity for Varuna is indicative of Mitra's type of love, rather than Varuna's. Lust doesn't feel pity for the object, but love will always feel pity or sympathy, empathy to the subject. So that's the thing, like if you're in an Anuradha Nakshatra, you certainly are going to be asking questions about romantic relationships. And this story, if you contemplate it a bit, can give you a lot of answers on how you can try to be more like Mitra. Find more in agreement and think more about the welfare of the others. Now, actually, what happens a lot is that Anuradha becomes full. Anuradha natives tend to be martyrs for love, or they just kill themselves for love, sacrifice themselves for love. So you also have to think about the quality of your subject. Mitra and Varuna found a high quality subject, Urvashi. Who are you devoting yourself to? Some biker dude? Or some dude, Think about the quality. Don't just give yourself to the first schmo that comes along. Think about the quality of the person that you are going to integrate your life with. Because if the person doesn't have any quality, they won't be able to treat you like Mitra back. Mitra and Mitra will go together. Mitra and Varuna, they split apart. They come together and they split apart. Mitra and Mitra will stay together. So in other words, if I love you pure and you don't love me pure, it's not going to work. If I don't love you pure but you love me pure, it's also not going to work. If I don't love you pure and you don't love me back pure, it's also not going to work, even though it might work in a dysfunctional way. But if both of the love is pure, then it works. So think about that too. One more little thing about Mitra is it's very interesting what part of the sky he rules. And also the concept of Anuradha is to fulfill. Like Radha or love gets Anuradha, the fulfillment of Radha, the result of love. Mitra is invoked. Mitra and Aryaman are invoked to make vows. But Aryaman is the kind of the writer of the contract, the maker of the promise. Mitra is the fulfiller of the promise. So Mitra gives fulfillment, love gives fulfillment, and delivers on the promises. So that's the other thing with Anuradha, is the nakshatra really hinges on, these are nice flowery words, these are everything, but can you actually deliver on this? You say, you got all these songs about how you're going to rock my world. Is it actually going to happen or not? When is it going to happen? You made promises about till death do us part. Well, now deliver on it. See, that's the problem. It's not just the promise making part. Anuradha is about the delivery. Mitra is about the delivery. And to underscore that, the portion of the sky, when you divide the sky into 8 and one Aditya takes each portion, the portion that belongs to Mitra is from the deep night. You get 1 prahara after midnight. So it's maybe 4 hours after midnight. I don't know. I'm just thinking 4 and I don't feel like pausing to work my math out. So some hours after midnight, and then you're going to get, I think 3 maybe, and then you're going to get those hours between that point and sunrise. So up to sunrise, Mitra rules up to sunrise. So what's he doing is he's delivering on Aryaman's promise and Martanda's situation. Martanda was on the western horizon. So he pulls the sun down, Mritya, to die, but puts it in an egg, Anda, so that it can be reborn again. Then Aryaman promises the sun to carry it to the other side, and it carries it to the midpoint. Then it gets down to the midpoint, and you get Varuna. Varuna deals with the soul right there and figures out what the next incarnation should be. So it deals with the sun down there and is thinking about the next day. Then Varuna delivers to Mitra, the sun, and then Mitra fulfills the promise of Martanda and Aryaman, the promise that you die now, but you'll be reborn later, to the sun. So, fulfilling promises is key to making Anuradha work right. If you think about the sutra, it's actually quite like that. It says, Abhyarohat parastat, abhyarudham avastat. And abhyarohat means to drum up, to stimulate. So this is where you're promising and stimulating, tantalizing. And then abhyarudham is where you deliver on it's the climax. It actually literally means the climax. So it's where you deliver upon the tantalization is the objective, or the avastat, for Anuradha. So it's not like Aryaman's Purva Palguni was all about make promises. Make promises. That's attractive. That's strong. That's manly. This one is deliver on promises. Fulfill the desire. Fulfill desires. To fulfill desires is the nature of Anuradha. But it is a very complicated nakshatra. People walk a thin line of losing themselves in search for pure love, because the object of love is so substandard. They're devoting themselves to ordinary people and even less than ordinary people, as if those people would be capable of reciprocating pure love. All right, so that's what we got for you on Mitra and Anuradha from this book. Let's see if you got any questions related to the subject, as I always have to say. Mitra and Varuna split up, Michelle, because they disagreed. Their reaction towards Urvashi was different, first of all, from the beginning. But disagreement causes a split. You see, so they disagreed fundamentally. Varuna wanted to continue to enjoy her. Mitra said, she's achieved the climax. It's done. So, and we also, so it's done. We're fulfilled. So Mitra felt fulfilled, Varuna felt hungry. And because of that disagreement, they split. But basically, Varuna's nature was more lusty. If you like, you can compare this to Anuradha versus Shatabishak. But be aware that Anuradha isn't as easy as it might sound. And that Shatabishak isn't as bad as it might sound. But Shatabishak is going to be more lusty. It's going to want to join with lots of things. That's what Shatabishak means. The desire to join 100 times. That's Varuna. Varuna's desire was Shatabishak. We got Urvashi here. Why just have one time? Let's do Shatabishak. Abhishak means to join. So it's the Shatabishak will just give you a lot of hunger and appetite. Anuradha is let's deliver the reward. So Shatabishak is less easy to placate, to satisfy than Anuradha, in theory. In practice, they're both really difficult to deal with romantically. But also, when it comes to romance, it's just like gambling. If you don't bet much money, you ain't going to win much money. So when you say that these nakshatras are difficult to deal with, this is where you also hit the jackpot, is to master something like Shatabishak or master Anuradha. Let's see what we got. Are Jesha and Anuradha a good match for marriage? You shouldn't just base it on one factor at all. Okay? That's really silly. You should at least do a Dashkutam. 10 different points of calculation. You should at least do that. I'll just try to do the silly stuff like, what's your sign? Oh, we get along great. Or ideally, you should do more than that even. You can go check out my reports, my videos about compatibility astrology. Okay? What else we got? Hello, Yuyi. Any other questions? Yes, Aryaman is related to Uttara Palguni. Aryaman is related to Purva Palguni, according to Taittiriya Brahmana. According to Rig Veda, it's Uttara Palguni. Rig Veda is much more famous, so it's much more common to think of Uttara Palguni for Aryaman. But Taittiriya Brahmana has a different point of view. It's that Aryaman is Purva Palguni. And since Rig Veda is hardly a book about the nakshatras at all, whereas Taittiriya Brahmana has significant portions, either directly or indirectly connected to the nakshatras, I would consider that book more important. As far as the age of them both, they're co-ancient. They're both Yajurveda, Rig Veda. It's beyond your dating. So Komal wants to know if Revati and Anuradha are compatible. Again, like, why would you just go with one thing? But Revati and Anuradha have a nice... Jesha and Anuradha, they have a bit of a weirdness to them. Just like, having given the disclaimer that you shouldn't just do it on one principle, let me just say something about it. Jesha is very lusty. and it wants for itself. It wants to conquer and take for itself. Anuradha is very lusty, you may say, but it's very lusty from a female type of lust. Jyeshta is a very male type of lust. Anuradha's lust is like wanting to be able to satisfy somebody, wanting to be able to please the person. So, do they go good or not? I really don't think so, but I may be wrong. And anyway, it's not. We can only talk theory because in practice, you want to consider way more than just what these two moon nakshatras are. But I may be wrong about this theory, but my theory is I think that Jyeshta is too takey and Anuradha is too givey. So what you'll get is a lot of exploitation. And Anuradha people are way open to exploitation. And a Jyeshta person is a key person to exploit them. They would easily do the exploitation. So I would be wary of that relationship. However, on the other hand, you got Revati and Anuradha. Those are both kind of sweet, where they're both thinking about giving. So that one might be a better combo. Levy Jesse says, most charts I've seen that have Anuradha, the people like stringed instruments. Have you noted anything like that, Vic? No. Maybe my problem is I'm not asking people what their favorite instruments are. But it would make, you'll notice that love, you may have noticed in my description of Urvashi that love and sex is a type of an art. It's not a type of science, it's a type of an art. So you may notice in practice that musicians tend to be sexy, even if they're ugly. Like that guy from the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger. That dude is ugly, but sexy. So it's like creativity and sexuality are the same. So nakshatras which have strong sexual content, you should just know that it's implied that they also have a lot of other things that go along with that, like the planet Venus. The planet Venus is about love, beauty, arts, music. Why? Because it's all in one thing. So similarly, Anuradha people probably have taste for music at the very least. They probably enjoy music and other forms of art and beauty. They like beauty because beauty is the thing. Beauty is the form. Just like dollar bills are the form that money takes, beauty is the form that love takes to transmit itself to another person. So Anuradha and other very lovey nakshatras, they tend to also be into music, interested in music, maybe even good at music. Whether it's stringed instruments are quite romantic. Blown instruments are not as romantic, at least if they're made out of metal. And flutes are very romantic, but brass instruments are not. So you might find like the romantic nakshatras, they really like music which is woodwind, string, like that. Because the thing about strings is you bend them and they dance all around and they move in a very feminine way. But no, I haven't done any studies like that. What's interesting? Let's see what else we've got here. Is female lust the same as love or devotion? Not really, otherwise we wouldn't call it lust. But it's a lot closer. You see, well, the female nature itself is Venusian, and Venus is the symbol for lust, for love. Mars is the symbol of lust. So the female nature itself is more love-oriented, even in its lust, because the lust of the female is to maintain a partnership, like to keep a person engaged with them. But it's lust because you want something from that person. So for example, like a classic gold digger kind of lusty woman is, well, I want this guy's money, so I'll keep him, around my finger by how great I cook for him and how hot I look and what I do in bed. So it's more complicated because there's an element of love in there, in that I'm giving this person stuff, but the fundamental underlying thing is still I want from that person. Whereas men's lust is just more simply pure lust, like I just want to get this woman's like nookie, right, or whatever they call it. So that's that. So yeah, women are closer to being able to comprehend and experience love than men are, and that's why Bhishma Dev told Yudhishthir that it's more enjoyable to live as a woman than to live as a man, because you can comprehend love better. You can not just comprehend it, but you can experience it better. So a person with many planets in Anuradha can lose oneself very easily, even with just one planet, if it's the right one or if it's a prominent planet. What about Venus in Anuradha? Does that show more about the partner's devotional type or the native himself? Depends on what house Venus is the lord of. But just Venus by itself? Both, don't you think? You don't attract people that are different from you. You attract somebody that's on the same page as you. In some weird cases, people attract very different people, but that must be where the Lord is in something very different than Venus. But generally, the way you love is the type of person that you attract to love. Are certain nakshatras more kama-oriented? Certainly. Certainly, like for example, Anuradha is very kama-oriented nakshatra. But you better not make a mistake of putting a value judgment on kama, that it's something negative. Kama is a purushartha. It's a goal of human life. And is the fundamental essence of all the goals of human life, including prema, which is the fifth transcendental goal. Kama is the quest to satisfy desire. That's what Anuradha does, satisfies desires. Now, when you're trying to satisfy your own desire, you're in ignorance and lust, because you think you're the center and you think you're the subject. But when you're trying to satisfy someone else's desire, then you are not in as much ignorance, because you realize that you're not the center. But it's still kama. But when it's directed to somebody else, it's prema. It becomes closer to prema. Now, when you realize the right object of love, then it's actually truly prema. Saturn in Anuradha is kind of like putting a block. See, I would actually kind of like to see lovey planets in Anuradha, even though it's never going to be an easy ride, like Moon in Anuradha, Venus in Anuradha, Mercury I like in Anuradha. Sun, Mars, and Saturn in Anuradha is kind of like a sign that Anuradha won't be able to really function so well, because these planets are not so good at being stimulating to others. They want to get stimulated by others. And that's what Anuradha needs. It needs imagination, it needs foreplay, it needs thought, it needs tantalization. Here's a nice question. Is prema the transcendental form of kama? Exactly. But true prema is a transcendental form of karma. You can have approximate prema as well, which is just pure love. Which is just like you're actually trying to love somebody for them. So it can approximate prema, but because you still have an ignorance in who you are, you don't even realize your connection to them. So there will always be some stain of kama in every love until we have moksha. which is where we realize who we actually are and what our relationship is with God, the divine, the universe. What remedy should one do to improve the energy of Anuradha? I don't know. I'm going to try to maybe figure out the rituals and all that stuff. My way of thinking is you just teach somebody what's going on, and then which is what the rituals do, you know. The rituals teach you symbolically what is happening psychologically. So in this day and age, when rituals are very foreign and nobody can really do them well, I feel it's just better to explain what's going on. What is the actual dynamic at work here with this nakshatra, and why are these things happening in your life? That's the remedy, to understand that. Is prema devotion? Prema is devotion. You can say it's devotion. Is Mitra's practice of prema the love of God in the other? Mitra, now, there's approximate prema and there's true prema. So Mitra is not the god of prema. Mitra is just the god of love, regular love. Prema is a transcendental love which is beyond moksha. So he's not, it's a purified form of kama. But that is on the point that it is not until you understand who you are and your relationship to God that you can actually love God, and that your relationship with everybody can be on the level of your experiencing God in them. And then you can have prema in everyday relationships. How do you strengthen Anuradha energy? Like I said, mostly you want to know, for any nakshatra, you want to study the sutra and see what the prastat is, the thing that it needs, and try to provide that prastat to the native. So for Anuradha, the prastat is a bhyarohat, which means you can look at it two ways. You can mean stimulation, but I think it's more accurate to say the ability to be stimulating. So people who have Anuradha, who want to improve their experience of life and love, need to focus on trying to learn how to be more stimulating over a long term in a real way. Good, we're getting good questions about prema. Amitanshu. Is prema always directed towards the divine? Yes, true prema will always be directed to the divine, because that's the only way that you're not in ignorance of who and what you and everything else are. So actually, this is not a very popular thing to say, and I definitely wouldn't want to say it in a churchy way, but you can't really love anybody without loving God. And it's really only by loving God and figuring out who and what God is that you're capable of loving people in the first place. So to understand what is divine, now you need to go and read Gita, read the Upanishads, think about it, meditate on what they're saying, to understand what's Brahman, what does it really come down to, and what are people. And Brahman is, what is it? What is the basis of reality? It's consciousness. Consciousness is what? Consciousness is experience. Experience means experiencer, people. And then you can start to, what do people do? They enjoy. They experience things that they want. You can start to build up a concept of what's divine and see it in the world and around, in people around you. He's Amritamchu Satyarthi. See, he wants the truth. How do I know my conclusions after meditation are in resonance with Gita's intended meaning? You study it and you have a guru. And you don't just pick a guru out of a hat, but you find somebody that obviously understands it deeply, that their understanding of it is the one that you want to have, and you have them correct your understanding. All right, I think I'll end it here. You guys are good, though. You guys are good. So I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. Good questions. Is self-love all we need? No, because you'll be ignorant about what the self is, actually. So just saying the whole concept of self-love already shows that there's ignorance. And when there's ignorance, nothing's going to work. So when there's vidya, then you don't think about self anymore as if it's something distinct from a non-self. So it's not that self-love is all you need. In fact, self-love is doomed to failure. But in prema, you actually experience that the beloved is the self. That the beloved is the self. So that's something to think about. Self-love is just some modern crap from New Age stuff. But that doesn't mean that you don't love yourself. But what I'm saying is that self-love is not the answer. You will love yourself because you will experience that the beloved is yourself. Now you can't just dance around with this stuff. You got to go and study the Upanishads for this to actually become real for you. Study it, meditate on it. You need this stuff to be real, that you can see Brahman, and you can experience myself, that self, same self. I love this person means I have to love myself. My love for this person, my ability to make that person happy is my self-worth. And the importance of my taking care of myself is my love for that person. So as long as there's ignorance between self and non-self, then nothing's going to work. So I feel that the concept of self-love is just perpetrating ignorance, of perpetrating the distinction between self and the other person. Rohini and Anuradha, hot. It's hot. Rohini is one of the really sexy. Arohana. What Anuradha needs is Arohana, and Rohini is Rohana. So, somebody said, Eve said that Anuradha is the remedy for Shlesha, which is an interesting thing. But Rohini is the remedy for Anuradha. Somebody with Rohini will be stimulate you, and be able to teach you how to be stimulating and how to accept stimulus. So that's exactly what the Anuradha person needs. Can truth ever be subjective? Truth is all subjective. It's all subjective. But there's an ultimate person who has an ultimate subjectivity called Paramatma. That's very interesting. Would I recommend Patanjali Sutra? Yeah, if you want to practice yoga, Patanjali Sutra is the definition of the school of yoga. So you should start by studying Patanjali Sutra for understanding Ashtanga yoga, which is not talking about whatever they're doing in this yoga studio, but actual Ashtanga yoga, which ends in Samadhi. The classical yoga system, you need to study Patanjali Yoga Sutra. You don't need to touch or even know the word Patanjali Yoga Sutra to do astrology, or you don't even really need it to do bhakti or other types of yoga, because the acharyas or teachers of the other types of yoga will include the references that you need to know from that sutra. All right, guys. I love this Komalja. She's so feisty. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. Stay awesome.